Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss the seventh chapter of mains second paper on Indian economy. Indian economy, some chapters we have already discussed last time for prelims purpose. Seventh chapter on Indian economy is relating to international trade or foreign trade. From that chapter, we have to study what is international trade, distinction between international trade and internal trade or domestic trade. Then, what is balance of trade? What is balance of payment? Distinction between balance of trade and balance of payment. So also in the syllabus it is especially mentioned structure of balance of payment. So we have to also to see the structure of the balance of payment. Then disequilibrium in the balance of payment. What do you mean by favorable balance of trade, unfavorable balance of trade, and then the trend of international trade, trend of foreign trade in India. These are the only topics that is included in the foreign trade in our syllabus. So we will start with international trade. What is international trade? 2 marks questions can be there, 5 marks as well as 10 marks questions we expect. For 2 marks as well as 10 marks or 5 marks, the same question may be asked. Depending upon the marks, you have to limit that answer. For example, in case of 2 marks question, maximum 2 or 3. 2 or 3 sentences is sufficient for the 2 marks questions. 5 marks, maximum 1 paragraph is sufficient. 1 paragraph is sufficient. And for 10 marks, 1 page. 1 page answer is sufficient for 10 marks. The same question may be asked for the 2 marks or 5 marks. As I said, that same question may also be asked for 10 marks. So, the first question is, what is international trade? International trade is, in other words, known as foreign trade. That means trade between one country and the rest of the world. Trade between one country and the rest of the world. That is called foreign trade or international trade, different from domestic trade. Domestic trade is, in other words, known as inter-regional trade. That is, the trade between different states or regions within the country is what is called domestic or internal trade. In contrast to that, we have international trade, that is, the trade relation between one country and the rest of the world. That is the subject matter of international trade or foreign trade. We also find that international trade is very essential. According to the classical doctrine, classical theory of international trade, especially the comparative cost theory, comparative cost doctrine of David Ricardo, international trade is essential, it is necessary, and it is also profitable when the comparative cost of production of different commodities in different countries are different. So when the comparative cost of production of commodity in different countries are different, international trade is essential, necessary as well as profitable. That is the content of the classical comparative cost doctrine of David Ricardo. When there is a international trade relation is existing, we can use the world resources in the best manner. Maximum exploitation of the available natural, mineral, human and all the resources are possible only when there is international trade allowed. So, it is essential. Otherwise, what happens? The world resources may remain unutilized. Underutilization, unutilized capacity may exist without any use. Whereas, if there is international trade relation is existing, we can completely utilize, fuller utilization of the capacity of the world as a whole is possible. And so, for that purpose, international trade is essential according to the comparative cost doctrine. Similarly, we also find that it is essential, it is profitable also, since the cost of production of different commodities in different countries are not the same. Since there is comparative cost difference is existing between different countries in the production of different commodities, international trade will be profitable. So, not only this, on another way also, international trade is essential because it is said that international trade can even avoid the possibility of a third world war. Why? Because we are getting into international trade means better cordial relationship is created between different countries. Intimate relationship among countries is possible. Friendly relationship between countries possible when there is international trade. Such a international trade and friendly relation can bring peaceful atmosphere in the world as a whole. It can avoid the possibility of a third world war. So in every respect, on economic or non-economic method, we may say international trade is essential, profitable and necessary for the peaceful atmosphere of the entire world. In this context, we know, in case of India, we have adopted in 1991 new economic policy. In the new economic policy, we have the liberalization policy, globalization policy, wherein a free trade is permitted. Prior to 1991, we know restrictions were there on international trade. And these restrictions on international trade prior to 1991 was either completely eliminated or minimized with the introduction of the new economic policy. That means the Industrial Resolution Act of 1991. With that, a free trade policy we have adopted in India. Now, in this case of international trade, two terms: balance of trade and balance of payment. There can be a question: distinguish between balance of trade and balance of payment. I usually ask the question sometimes for 2 marks or even for 5 marks. Such a question can be asked. Distinguish between balance of trade and balance of payment. Balance of trade, when you take the balance of trade is the difference between the value of goods and visible items exported and imported. A country is exporting as well as importing goods. And these goods exported and imported are visible items in the international trade. Therefore, in a systematic manner, if a country is preparing the entire visible trade transaction, value of export and import during a particular period of time, usually 1 year, is what is known as balance of trade. So in the balance of trade, we prepare a statement relating to the goods imported and exported. The value of goods exported and imported are systematically recorded during a particular period of time, usually for a 1 year period. That is called balance of trade, visible items. When you take this balance of trade, that means export as well as import during 1 year, when you take sometimes this total export value means we are exporting commodity from India to the rest of the world and we receive foreign exchange. That is a receipt. We are getting income. We are receiving foreign exchange from the rest of the world to India. That is a credit transaction. And at the very same time, when you import commodities, money is flowing from India to the rest of the world. A payment is to make to the rest of the world. And so that when you record all this receipt by way of exportation and payment by way of importation during 1 year period of time, the amount may balance. Export earnings as well as import payment may be same. We call balance of trade equilibrium. That is an equilibrium. Receipt and payment with respect to export as well as import is same during the period. No harm. It is equilibrium state of affair. But at the very same time, there can be disequilibrium. In the balance of trade position itself, there can be a disequilibrium. That disequilibrium can be favorable, positive or favorable disequilibrium, or disequilibrium negative, deficit. That means when the export earning of a country is greater than the import payment during the same period. During the same period, what is received from the rest of the world by way of our exportation is greater than the import payment due to other countries during the very same period. We face with what is called positive, surplus, favorable balance of trade position. Our balance of trade can be disequilibrium in the balance of payment, balance of trade, because of either export more or import more. When export earnings is greater than the import payment, balance of trade disequilibrium is what is known as favorable, positive, because we are earning more. We are earning more revenue than what we owe to the rest of the world. It is favorable balance of trade position. Conversely, when the payment for importation exceed the export earnings, then we are facing with unfavorable balance of trade position, negative balance of trade position. That negative is, in other words, known as deficit in the balance of trade. So disequilibrium in the balance of trade may be either positive favorable or unfavorable negative deficit. That is with regard to balance of trade position. And at the very same time, a country may be dealing with other country, not only visible items like goods, but many other type of items. We say that invisible items may also be entering into international trade. Visible items. We can also prepare another account taking into consideration the entire transaction, inclusive of visible as well as invisible transaction. That means all economic transactions, including visible as well as invisible during a particular period of time, usually 1 year, is recorded in a systematic manner. That account is what is known as a balance of payment account. So, balance of payment account is all the economic transactions, complete economic transaction between one country and the rest of the world during a particular period of time, usually 1 year. It is a macro, complete, aggregate transaction between that country and the rest of the world. Aggregator. Overall transaction between one country and the rest of the world constitute what is called balance of payment. What can be balance of trade? Balance of trade is not a overall account. It is only a segmental account, which is balance of trade. Balance of trade is only a segmental account because only one part, visible items of transactions alone are included. Overall, aggregate, entire transaction, visible as well as invisible items are entering into the balance of payment position, complete transaction, complete economic transaction between one country and the rest of the world during one particular year is recorded in a systematic manner, which constitutes balance of payment. So the balance of trade as well as balance of payment can be different. As in case of balance of trade, here also equilibrium and disequilibrium in the balance of payment position is possible. How can be the equilibrium? That means the entire inflow of currency from the rest of the world to India by way of exportation of visible items, invisible items, all taken together. What money flowing from the rest of the economy to one country, and what is the outflow of currency from one country to the rest of the world by way of importation. Complete transaction when you take export earnings as well as import payment are equal, balance of payment position is in equilibrium. Similar to balance of trade, here also balance of payment favorable, balance of payment unfavorable position possible. Above in the aggregate transaction account, macro account, when we take visible as well as invisible items, balance of payment position, we find surplus, favorable, positive balance of payment position when complete earnings from the rest of the world to one country is exceeding this payment to the rest of the world. Favorable balance of payment. Conversely, unfavorable when the receipt is lesser than the payment. In the overall account, when the receipt is lesser than the payment to the rest of the world, we find balance of payment position is in deficit, negative balance of payment. So we know what is balance of trade, what is balance of payment, what are the state of affair in balance of trade as well as in balance of payment. Now, in our syllabus, one more is given, specifically structure of balance of payment. Structure of balance of payment is given in the syllabus. So when we take the structure of balance of payment, vertically column wise, when the balance of payment record statement you are taking for one period, vertically, two columns are there. The first column, credit. Credit means what? Positive receipt. Whatever we receive from the rest of the world is recorded as receipt on one side. And on the right side, the other side against that, we write debit minus. That is payment. So vertically, the balance of payment position is consisting of two columns, credit, that is receipt by way of export and all these things, and the next side by we have the debit column, payment to the rest of the world by way of importation, etc. When you take the horizontal method of explanation, balance of payment horizontally, when we are taking, in balance of payment, we have three accounts. Three accounts in the balance of payment. Horizontally, when we discuss, there are three accounts included in the balance of payment position. What are the three accounts? That is a structure. What are the three accounts in the balance of payment structure? One is current account. Current account. One is current account. Second is what is called capital account. And the third one is what is called official settlement account. Third is official settlement account. Above we find horizontally three accounts in the balance of payment. One, what is known as current account. Second is capital account. And the third is official settlement account. Now we may remember that third account that is official settlement account is in case of Indian balance of payment account not prepared. We do not have the third account. Separately, the third account, official settlement account, is not shown in the Indian balance of payment position. It is included along with the second capital account. Third account is included in the second capital account as in case of India, but in all the other countries. For example, in USA or in UK, we find this current account is current account, capital account, as well as official settlement account. Three divisions we can find in the balance of payment account of the country. That is a structure in general, but in case of India, the third one is absent. A separate official settlement account we are not preparing. It is including in the capital account. So in case of India, only current account consisting of current account, then capital account alone is there. Therefore, in the current account, first item on current account, two sides. In the current account, two sides will be there. One, export. Current account credit side. Current account credit side we have export item. Current account credit side, receive side. First one is export item. In that export item, A, first item of exportation is goods, commodities traded between the country. What exportation of commodity from one country to the rest of the world during that period is taken as item number A of export in current account. So, first account, current account in the balance of payment, wherein under the received column, export is there, and in the export, first item is goods exported from the country to the rest of the world. In the current account, export, visible item. Then B, the second item in the export item of the current account. In the current account, second item B is service export. Service. Service items are also included as item number B in the export earnings of current account. Service item, a cost of a transaction, transportation of commodities, then insurance. All these are what is service items included in the current account after goods exported, the second item services. And the third item is transfer receipts in the current account under the export item. The third item is what is called transfer receipt. Transfer receipt, what is received from the rest of the world by way of gift, aid, donation. These are also earnings. These are also revenue, income earned by the domestic country. So all such grants, then the donations received from the rest of the world by one country, coming under the receipt side, is what is known as transfer receipts. So in the current account, balance of payment, first that is current account. Current account left hand side export earnings. Under the export earnings, item A, goods exported from the country to the rest of the world. B, service exported, service exportation. And C, transfer receipts. These are the three items in the current account of balance of payment. Similarly, coming to the right hand side, import payment ആണ്. Just opposite to that, against each item, import column. Next, import column, the very same items. Very same item under the import column, we have A, goods. Goods imported to the country from the rest of the world. A payment due to the importation of commodity from the rest of the world. So item number A under the import column of current account is also the same, goods. But goods imported to the country from the rest of the world. A second, services. As in case of the earlier, here also services. Services imported from the rest of the world to the country. Service importation. The other is service exportation. So you may know that in the balance of payment account, one account is current account. In the current account, left hand side we are including the receipt. In the receipt export, three items we are including: goods, services and transfer receipt. Similarly, on the right hand side is import. Under the import of the right hand side, also the very same three items. A, goods. Goods imported from the rest of the world to our country. Similarly, B, services. Services imported from the rest of the world to our country. And C, the same, transfer payment. Transfer payment from this country to transfer payment from this country to the other. So the two sides of current account, export item as well as import item, which constitute what is called current account. In the next one, in the balance of payment, second account is what is known as capital account. In the current account items we know. Similarly, the second one is capital account. The main intention of the capital account is investment. Investment transaction for capital formation purposes, income generation purposes. And in the capital account, first item, capital account, receipt. Under the receipt side, left hand side, receipt side, first item is borrowings from foreign countries. Borrowings from the foreign countries, capital account, item number A. The second item is direct investment, foreign direct investment. Direct investment, direct foreign investment. Investment by foreigners directly in our country. These are the two items under the capital account. Capital account under the receipt side, A, borrowing from the rest of the world for capital formation, asset formation purposes. These are borrowed from the rest of the world for capital formation, asset formation, income generation, productive purposes. Such items are what are included in the capital account. Under the second item, that means a capital account, second item, receipt, second item is direct investment, FDI, foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is also for capital formation, income generation, productive purposes, asset formation in our country. These are the two items included under the receipt side of capital account. Similarly, when we take the payment account, payment side of the capital account. Capital account, payment side, right hand side, the same items. A, instead of borrowing, lending to the rest of the world. We are also lending. We are also lending to the rest of the world for capital formation purposes of that country. For that country we are paying. So lending to the rest of the world for asset formation, capital formation, creative purposes, productive purposes, we are lending to the rest of the world, included as item number A of payment item in the capital account. B, second item. Second item under the payment is direct investment. Direct investment in the foreign countries. Direct investment in the foreign country. So we have the capital account as well as current account. Current account and capital account. These are the only two items included in the formation of balance of payment in India. In the other countries, in the rest of the world, a third item is also there in the balance of payment account, and the third item is what is called official settlement account. Official settlement account, third account in the balance of payment account of other countries, but in India, this third account is also included in the capital account. That is also included in the capital account. So in the balance of payment account, three accounts: current account, capital account, as well as the third one, official settlement account, which is not prepared separately in India. The items of the third item included along with the capital account in case of India. Other countries, they have all the three separately shown in the balance of payment account. So in the official settlement account, on the receipt side, included increase in foreign official holdings. Increase in the foreign official holdings. In the Reserve Bank of India, we are having reservation of gold, IMF, SDR and all this. For the asset we have in the Reserve Bank of India, which is the official settlement account, receipt side shown in the left hand side. In the right hand side, decrease in the official reserve of gold and foreign currencies. That is, decrease in the amount of the holdings, gold or the foreign currency reservation in the RBI is included. It is shown in the right hand side. So these are all the three accounts. That is a structure of the balance of payment account in case of every country. In case of India also, the very same. The item third account separately not prepared, that is all. It is included along with the capital account. Then Another thing, what we have to discuss in the foreign trade according to our syllabus is trend of India's foreign trade. Trend of India's foreign trade. You may know that since 1951, when we started our first 5-year plan, development plans we have started in 1951, we were experiencing the deficit in balance of trade position. Balance of trade, balance of payment position in case of India, starting from the first 5-year plan onwards, experiencing negative trend, deficit. Every time we hear balance of payment is in deficit in India since 1951. So we have to look into some statistical data showing the trend of the balance of trade position in India since our first 5-year plan. Not only that, deficit all time, it is going on increasing, widening also. Year after year we find not only we are experiencing with a deficit balance of trade position, but that deficit is becoming wider and wider year after year. A trend characteristic feature of India's balance of trade. Some statistical data to show this. For example, in the 6th 5-year plan, the period is 1980-85. 1980-85 period, in the 6th 5-year plan, average negative deficit average was to the extent of 5,700 crores of rupees. 5,700 crores of rupees average deficit in 6th 5-year plan period 1980-85 in India. And that when we come to the 10th 5-year plan, 2002-2007. 2002-7 period, if you are taking, the deficit increased to 1,41,251 crores. 1,41,251 crores per year. Whereas under the 6th plan, 5,700 crores of rupees per year increased in the 10th plan period, 1,41,251 crores per year, 2002-2007 period. So again we find deficit going on increasing year after year, and when the 10th 5-year plan, it average, that means yearly, 1,41,251 crores of rupees minus deficit in the balance of trade position of India. Again, if you come to the 11th plan, end of the 11th plan, the assessment is that the deficit during the 11th 5-year plan was again increased 5,65,675 crores per annum. 5,65,675 crores per annum during the 11th 5-year plan deficit. So it is evident that the deficit going on increasing, widening, going on increasing year after year. When we come to the last year of UPA government, 2013-14. 2013-14 last year when we come, the magnitude of deficit again increased to 8,10,423 crores per year. 8 lakhs from 5 lakhs. From 5 lakhs, the next year, 2013-14, deficit increased to 8,10,423 23 crores. So it is evident from so much of statistical data, it is evident that India was experiencing a deficit in the balance of trade position year after year, and not only that, the deficit was going on increasing, widening. It was going on increasing year after year. When we continue that, coming to first half of the last year, 2019-20, first half. During the first half of 2019-20, there was an improvement. There was an improvement in the balance of trade position of India. And during that period, we find foreign reserve comfortable in India at that time. Foreign reserve, foreign exchange earnings, and the reserves in the Reserve Bank of India was comfortable. That means $461.2 billion of 10th January 2020. 10th January 2020 this year, 10th January 2020, the foreign exchange reservation was comfortable in the Reserve Bank of India foreign exchange earning due to our international trade relation, $461.2 billion worth of foreign exchange reserve in the RBI at the time January 2020. That was comfortable. Current account deficit narrowed. The deficit was widening earlier, but at this time we find the current account deficit also decreased, narrowed from 2.1% in 2018-19. It is reduced to 1.5%. From 2.1% in 2018-19, it came down to 1.5%. That is reduction, narrowed in the current account. We find such a reduction. And that reduction was in 2019-20. In the first half of 2019-20, it was reduced to 1.5%. Then the contraction during this period was mainly due to the decrease in the crude oil prices. There was a decrease in the crude oil prices, which led to the contraction in the magnitude of deficit in 2019-20 first half period. Accumulated foreign reserve. The accumulated foreign reserve at the end of 2013-14 was $304.2 billion. When in 2013-14, the accumulated foreign exchange reserve in the RBI was $304.2 billion. Then at the end of 2018-19, it increased to $412.9 billion. $412.9 billion worth of foreign exchange reservation. So that period was somewhat better in comparison with the earlier period. After that means 2009, when we come again the later period, recently we find export reduce, recorded decrease in the balance of trade position deficit decreased 60.28% when April 2020, because of the lockdown and corona. Because of the corona as well as lockdown, there was a sharp decline. There was a sharp decline, 60.28% in April 2020. April 2020, it is 60.28% decline, and the amount was $10.6 billion US dollar. Reservation. 10.6 billion US dollar was the foreign exchange reservation in the Reserve Bank of India due to the lockdown. Due to the lockdown as well as the corona, we find the current very sharp decline in the foreign exchange reserve. At the very same time, we may also see, due to the corona, importation of commodities from the rest of the world have also decreased. Import also decreased. Imports decreased by 58.65% during the corona period. 58.65% decreased, and the amount comes to 17.12 billion US dollar. 17.12 billion dollar worth of importation in April 2020. Import was also reduced because there was no production, there was no transaction, there was no trade during the lockdown period. So that was also another most important feature we find. Though 2019-20 first half we could find an improvement, subsequently we find due to the corona and lockdown, it has drastically reduced. So that the trade deficit came down to 6.76 billion. 6.76 billion US dollar against 15.33 billion dollar in April 2019. April 2019, this deficit was 15.33 billion dollar, which was reduced to 6.76 billion dollar because of the absence of transaction trade due to the corona period. Then we also find WTO, World Trade Organization, is making a forecast that global trade volume to drop sharply by 13.32%. 13.32% trade volume will sharply decline in the coming years, according to the prediction made by WTO. And we know that in this respect, because of the downtrend in the production and foreign exchange reservation, foreign transaction, etc., government have declared a package. Economic package has been introduced. That package, economic package for boosting the economy from the depression, we may see separately. That we may take in detail separately are the economic packages. About this nature, trend of the Indian foreign trade during this period, evidently we find what is the trend in the deficit of the Indian balance of trade and balance of payment position. Correspondingly, without discussing the package introduced by government for reviving the economy from the depression, we may see what are the causes of such a decrease in the trade balance. That means the deficit is going on increasing due to what reason? What are the reasons behind the increasing, widening deficit in the balance of trade in India? Complete, taken together. What are the causes? And the main causes are, number one, the growth rate of export. Export growth rate was less. Slow growth rate of exportation in comparison to import. In comparison to import, export was decreasing, slowing down. A slow growth only we find in the exportation of commodity from India to the rest of the world. Except 2002-03. 2002-03 alone we may find that there was a surplus, a deficit was not there. In all the other period we find that the export earning and import earning, when we compare, the growth rate of export from India to the rest of the world was comparatively very low growth rate comparative to importation of commodity. So when the import is greater than the export, we will face with unfavorable deficit, negative. That is usual. So one of the reasons for the widening deficit in the balance of trade position continuously, persistently we find. So the first cause for mounting up of the deficit in India, slow growth rate in export. At the very same time, import growth rate is faster. In comparison to the import growth rate, export growth rate is very slow. As a result of which, deficit going on increasing. Exemption only 2002-03 period. During that period, there was a boosting up of exportation, a deficit was also narrowed. Then the second reason is very large increase in the value of importation. Due to several reasons, import value was going on increasing during this period, all this time since 1951. So the slowing growth of export and faster growth rate of import, except 2002-03, one of the reasons for the deficit to widen year after year. Secondly, very large increase in the value of importation. When you consider the value of importation, that was also growing at a faster level due to some reasons. Statistically, when you are taking data, 1950-51 period, starting of the first 5-year plan, we find importation was to the tune of rupees 608 crores of rupees. 608 crores rupees worth of commodities were the importation from the rest of the world in India during 1950-51 time. Whereas when we come to 2013-14, the total value of import commodities to the tune of rupees 27,15,434 crores. 27,15,434 crores rupees worth of importation we have during 2013-14. Large scale increase in the importation another cause. Whereas the export was decreasing, slow growth rate only alone we see in exportation, but importation was growing at a faster level, causing to deficit going on increasing. Then that increase in the importation was mainly due to what reason? Large scale development expenditures for development purposes during the 5-year plan period. We were importing from the rest of the world in large quantities, and that importation was mainly capital goods, machinery for the development purposes, investment purposes. During the 5-year plan period, capital goods were largely imported from the foreign countries to India due to 5-year plan. For example, 60-61 period, the importation of this machinery from the rest of the world was 360 crores rupees. Only 360 crores of rupees worth of heavy machinery we imported from the rest of the world during 60-61 period. Whereas in 2013-14, the importation was to the tune of 3,28,866 crores. To 2013-14, we find 3,28,866 crores rupees worth of importation. So that is also due to what reason? The developmental purposes. Through the 5-year plan, investment expenditure was increasing and machineries were importing from the rest of the world in large scale. Then, another reason for the import to increase during the period was increase in the petrol prices. One of the most important commodity that was importing to India during all this period was petrol. Petrol price was going on increasing. Consumption of petrol in India was also increasing. Large scale importation of petrol was necessary. During 60-61, rupees 69 crores worth of petrol alone we have imported from the rest of the world to India. Which period? 60-61. How much? Only 69 crores rupees worth of petrol. On the other hand, when we come to 2013-14, total amount spent for the importation of petrol, 9,97,885 crores. 9,97,885 crores rupees worth of petrol we have imported. Our importation of not only the capital goods, machinery for investment purposes during all this period was increasing. This petrol import from the rest of the world to India was also going on increasing during all this period. 9,97,885 crores rupees worth of petrol we have imported during 2013-14 period. That also led to fast growth in the importation. Import value was going on increasing compared to the growth rate of exportation. Then another most important item we were importing during all this period, especially due to the green revolution, was fertilizer importation. Fertilizer importation during this period, and especially due to the green revolution period, importation of fertilizers from the rest of the world to India was fastly growing. Another reason, similar to the petrol, fertilizer importation was also another reason for the growth rate of deficit in the Indian context during all this period. Then, importation of jewelry, pearls, gold, pearls, and other precious metal, another most important item we are importing. That importation was also fastly growing during this period, not only petrol, not only this petrol as well as fertilizer. Similar to this, another most important item we were importing during this period, and even now, jewelry, precious stones, diamonds, and other things. For example, in 60-61 period, jewelry importation to India from the rest of the world was only very little, 1 crore rupees worth of jewelry around 60-61 we imported. Whereas 2013-14 when we take, 2013-14 the total value for the importation of jewelry and other precious stones from the rest of the world to India was to the extent of 1,44,167 crores. 1,44,167 crores rupees worth of jewelry item we have imported in 2013-14. Whereas in 60-61 only 1 crore. Such a fast trend in the growth rate of importation of pearls and other precious items, another reason. The fast growth rate of importation was due to several reasons. Along with all this, we also find that the erratic growth rate of export was also another reason for the increasing deficit. Erratic export of commodities from India to the rest of the world. The reason is that, and the first reason for the decrease in the growth rate of exportation was low world demand. During this period, we find demand for Indian commodities in the rest of the world was also decreasing. Demand for world, in this case of Indian commodity, there was a decrease in the demand for Indian commodity. And that reason mainly was worldwide depression or the recession. Recession, the reason for the low demand for Indian commodities in the international market, as a result of which export was reduced. Growth rate of exportation was low. Similarly, low income price elasticity, another reason for the slow growth rate of exportation of commodity from India to the rest of the world. Main reason, mainly, our export commodity was mainly primary goods. Primary goods are the only commodity that is demanded in the international market regarding the Indian commodity. Our agro-industrial product may be sometimes demanded heavily in the international market. Agro-based products. These are all primary goods. The elasticity of demand for the primary good is normally less elastic. Rather, low elastic demand for the commodities exported from India to the rest of the world. Another reason for the slow growth rate of exportation in this case. Then we also find there were restrictions imposed by the other countries with regard to the importation of commodities in their country. Many rules, regulations, restrictions were imposed by the foreign countries for the importation of commodities from the rest of the world to their country, and as a result also our exportation decreased fast. So we find many reasons for the slow growth rate of export, and at the very same time faster growth rate of import during all this period, except during 2002-03 and the last 2019-20 period, we find slight difference. And these are all some of the reasons for the deficit to grow in the Indian context. Therefore, what we can suggest, as a suggestion, we may say the recent may say packages introduced by the government during the lockdown period to recover from the depression, coronavirus as well as the lockdown, decrease in the economic activity in India. Monetary packages were introduced by Government of India. In that, MSME was allowed subvention, interest reduction. At low rate of interest, MSME was allowed the facilities, loan facilities in the package. So we may suggest that interest subvention scheme announced by government recently for the MSME should be extended for all the commodities, especially the commodities that are exported from India to the rest of the world. They should also be given an incentive. Exporters producing commodities for exportation purposes should also be given the very same concession of interest subvention, which is announced only for the MSME case recently in the packages announced by government. So that can be one suggestion for improving our trade balance position, interest subvention, interest reduction, cut in the rate of interest for all type of producers, especially to the exporters who are producing for export purposes, should be extended this facility. Similarly, another reason, another most important feature we find in the Indian international trade and transaction is that delay in clearance of import containers. That means it may cause to increased demurrages. When a commodity we are importing, and if it is not transported immediately from the place, we have to pay demurrages for the delay in the clearance of the cargo. Demurrages we have to pay. That also another reason for the increased cost of importation of commodity, that also should be given due consideration in the package. Then, efforts should also be made to supply drugs and pharmaceuticals from India to the rest of the world. India is sometimes known in the international market as world's pharmacy. That means our medical medicine of different types are hotly demanded in the international market. And in this respect, more care should be given for the production and exportation of the medical items, especially to the COVID cases. New medicine, when we should produce, it should be also given good market in the international field, which may be demanded by the other countries because of the reputation we have already with respect to the Indian pharmaceuticals and drugs in the international market. These are some of the suggestions we can give for improving the position. So that is with regard to the international trade. In the 7th chapter, therefore, international trade given. What is international trade? What do you mean by favorable, unfavorable balance of trade position? Then what are the structure of balance of payment position? Explain the structure. Then what are the reasons for the increasing deficit in the balance of trade position in India? Causes. These are all the possible questions we can from the international trade. Then similarly, another topic in the 7th, next chapter, 9th chapter, next one, is relating to the Kerala economic model. Kerala model of economic development, where some assessment we have already made in the prelims class. Balance for essay purpose, we have some topics in the model. One is a role of disaster model in the Kerala model of economic development, disaster management, and Kerala economy. Disaster management in the Kerala economy. Role of disaster management in Kerala economic model. That is the next topic in connection with the Kerala economy. Disaster management model of Kerala economy. Actually, disaster is a topic coming under the geography. It is a topic usually discussed in geography. But with respect to the Kerala model of economic development, what is the speciality we find? What is the speciality we find in the Kerala model of economic development? The role of disaster management. That is what we have to explain in economics. Disaster management model in the Kerala economic development. We know that disaster is a common phenomenon. Disaster is a common phenomenon to humanity. And we find that people are vulnerable. All types of disaster is vulnerable. We are vulnerable to the different types of disaster. For example, earthquake, flood, cyclone, drought. These are all natural type of disaster. And we usually face such types of disaster unpredictable such things. Random factors. These are all random factors, not easy to forecast. And so we have to prepare. We have to be very ready to face with all such a situation. That may be one of the most important phenomenal characteristic feature of Kerala model of economic development. So how far the disaster management is a successful one in case of the Kerala economy, that is the significant. That is what we have to discuss in case of disaster management in connection with the economic development of Kerala economy. In Kerala, you see that though there are many different types of disaster, man-made or natural, flood is the most important one. Most important disaster is flood, followed by storm, cyclone, etc. So flood is the most important one with regard to the Kerala economy. And here in case of disaster management, the role of state government is very important. And in this respect, that central government is playing only a facilitator's role. Only a facilitator providing some facilities. That can be the role of the central government with regard to the disaster management. An active participation, active role is to play by the state government with regard to the disaster management. That is why in the Kerala economic model, we discuss disaster management as how the Kerala government is facing and what are the steps taken and what is the significance of the model of disaster management with respect to Kerala economy. State government is responsible generally. As a central government cannot be very active with regard to the controlling and managing the disaster in a particular state. It is a responsibility of the state government. And with regard to the state government, Kerala government, there is a state level disaster management committee has been formulated by government, Kerala government. For the purpose of disaster management, Kerala government have formulated a disaster management committee. And this committee is consisting of senior secretaries of all departments. Senior secretaries of all department members of this committee constituted by government for the management of disaster. And similarly, representatives of NGOs, non-governmental organization, NGOs, representatives are also there in the committee formulated by Government of Kerala for the management of disaster. At the very same time, similarly, we also find the national level, central government level also, a crisis management committee has been constituted. Crisis committee. Crisis management committee has been constituted by the central government for the same purpose of disaster management in all the states. Then, that committee is headed by cabinet secretary and secretaries from major departments. Cabinet secretary as well as the secretaries from major departments members constituted by central government known as crisis management committee. So as far as the Kerala state is concerned, we have the disaster management committee formulated by the state government, and to facilitate the services, provisions, assist the state government, central government is also having the crisis management committee responsible for the purpose. And in case of the disaster management, the question is not only to prevent, not to prevent natural or man-made disaster, but also in connection with that, there are many other questions, many other things to be done with regard to the management of disaster. Many types of disaster cannot be averted, but we can mitigate. We can reduce the impact and effect of such types of disaster. If you make provisions and carefully measures are adopted by government, we can reduce the harmful effect of such types of disaster. Though it may not be possible to prevent the natural disaster, permanently it is not possible, but we can take many steps for reducing the impact, damages caused by this natural calamities we can reduce if proper management, provision and care is taken by the government. Precautions we can take, and along with that precautions we also require some measures for reducing the harmful effects of disaster. In this respect of disaster, one more word we have to look into, that is hazard management. Hazard management as well as disaster management cannot be used as synonymous terms. Cannot be considered as similar terms or synonymous terms. Hazard management on the one side, disaster management on the other. They differ, not synonymous terms. Hazard management is, let me say, a dangerous situation. That is concerned with hazard, is concerned with a dangerous situation that poses a threat to human beings. A threat to human beings. That means people are worried about such types of threats. Though it is not happened, there is a possibility is there, so that the people are always worried about that. That is what we call as a hazard. And on the other hand, the disaster management is an event that causes damages to human life and prosperity. Damages are caused to the human life and prosperity by the disaster management. Such an event need not happen in case of the hazard. And even if such an event happens, the severity, the harmful effects may not be so severe as in case of the disaster. The effect need not be so severe. For example, suppose there is a earthquake. Earthquake happens in a desert area. In the desert area, there is earthquake. It may not be harmful to the society, since the habitants is very less in the desert area and there is no human beings. The impact of this event may not be severe to the society in the desert. On the other hand, if it happens in a city, earthquake happens in a city, it may have more catastrophic effects. Many dangerous effect may be there in the society if it happens in the city. In the earlier case, former case, when it happens in the desert area, it cannot be considered as a hazard. It cannot be considered as a disaster, but that is only a hazard. That is only a hazard, as it is not so severe to the society, but as it is very severe to the society, harmful effects are there in the city area, we consider this as a disaster. So the disaster as well as the hazard are different in nature. In this respect, we may also say that disaster is connected with the hazard as well as one more thing, that is vulnerability. That means people can escape sometimes from the disaster. Depending upon the socio-economic as well as other facility, the impact may not be same to all sections of the population. For example, if there is a flood, sometimes the rich section of the population can quit that place, or they may go to some other places, or he may go even to a 5-star hotel and live there. But poor, the most common section of the population may suffer a lot because they cannot afford to. And so that they will suffer a lot. So, depending upon their economic condition, the impact may vary from one person to the other with regard to the disaster. Similarly, if there is a disaster happens, because of the physical inability also, the persons may suffer a lot. For example, if there is a old person, very old person, or a small baby, during flood season, they cannot They cannot come out. They cannot escape. They cannot cross across. And therefore, they will suffer a lot since physically they are not fit to. They are not physically fit, so harmful effect may be there with regard to their escaping from the situation. Therefore, socio-economic, physical factors are different for different sections of the population, on basis of which the impact may vary from one person to the other person, from one society to another society. The impact of this disaster will differ. And in this respect, you know that the factors leading to the hazard as well as the disaster may be one and the same. Very same factors may be there. What are the items included under the disaster? And what are the items included in hazard? Same. Cyclone, earthquake, storm. These are all events included in both. But the impact and the consequences, ultimate consequences, will differ from one to the other. In the disaster, it is not at all a matter. In disaster, it is very severe, but in hazard, it is not at all a matter. That is with regard to the disaster as well as the hazard. Actually, disaster means hazard plus the viability of the person with respect to the socio-economic conditions. There are 3 stages for disaster management. And according to the 3 stages, first stage is what is called pre-disaster management. First stage is what is called pre-disaster management. And during this period, the management, the things to be done is carrying out of the awareness to the people with regard to the possible disaster. A carrying out information, sufficient previous information shall be given to the people with regard to the possibility of a disaster. Preparations and make them aware of the possible disaster to happen immediately. That is the previous stage. The first stage, pre-disaster management. Government have to take quick steps. For example, if there is a possible flood, the people should be asked to go far away from that place, and some accommodation should be provided by government for the residents of such people. That is a first step required, giving sufficient awareness to the people with regard to the possible disaster. Secondly, during the period of disaster, what type of management? During the period of disaster, what type of management is necessary? When flood is there, government and many other provision have to be made for the removal of the person from the flood area. Steps. Hard work is necessary for the help page to the people during the period process of disaster. Second stage. That is the second stage. During the period of occurrence of the event, what shall be the precautions? What shall be the provisions made by government for the safeguarding of the people from the disaster? That is second stage. Third stage is with regard to the recovery, rehabilitation. Recovery or rehabilitation of the, we may say, disaster affected persons. Even after the disaster, after the event, after the incidents, immediately it is not possible to get everything as in the previous stage. Many things government have to do for the restructuring, reconstruction, providing provisions after the disaster. Many provisions government have to do. That is what is known as the recovery phase or rehabilitation phase. All are the three phases for disaster management. One is pre-disaster management, first stage, preparatory stage. Second, intermediary stage of what things we have to do during the period of occurrence of the event. And the third one is rehabilitation. Rehabilitation of the affected persons for their resettlement. These are the three. In this respect, in all these three respects, especially in the second and the third stage, Kerala is showing some difference from the rest of the states. For example, if you take the case of 2018 flood in Kerala, after the occurrence of the event, we have introduced Rebuild Kerala program. Rebuild Kerala program we have introduced. And the Rebuild Kerala program is having a slogan title of Nammal Namukkai. Nammal Namukkai, the slogan title of Rebuild Kerala. After the occurrence of the event 2018 flood, for the rehabilitation of the people affected by the flood, the program model we have constituted in Kerala known as the Rebuild Kerala program with the slogan title of Nammal Namukkai, which means we for ourselves. From that word itself we can understand the speciality of Kerala model of rehabilitation or disaster management in the economic development of Kerala. That is, we for ourselves. That is a norm. That is the idea behind the provision of Rebuild Kerala. People should have the feeling that their contribution, their work is for ourselves, for their own benefit. They are doing work. They are contributing. They by themselves contribute for their own benefit. It is not for the benefit of a third person or a second person. You see, for their own benefit, they by themselves is contributing. Cooperation of general public. Essential feature of the Kerala model. Kerala model of restructuring, rehabilitation is based on the principle of people support. People support, that is very essential feature of the Kerala model of disaster management. Then, you know that in 2008, unprecedented history we have. That is, such a flood is having no such a precedent history, which is sustained. And after the flood, we have formulated the rehabilitation program with the wholehearted support of the general public. Rescue operation, the second stage also, you see, the second stage is during the period of occurrence of the event. There also, Kerala is having a model. What is that? The cooperation. That is a rescue operation by the people. Especially in case of this flood 2018, we find that fishermen, they have contributed a lot for the helpage to the affected people. Their participation, their contribution, their cooperation was recognized, appreciated. It is appreciated by all the nations, the world as a whole. Appreciated the participatory role of the human beings. During the second stage of the event, their contribution was very great. Not only the rescue in the form of removing the person from the place to another, but contribution, liberal contribution have been made with respect to many things required to the people. They collected materials and supplied these materials in the camp, everything with the cooperation of the people as a whole. A characteristic feature which was appreciated in all the other countries in Kerala model of disaster management. And we have also constituted Navakerala Karma Paddhati, Navakerala Karma Paddhati, which is also for the rehabilitation, rebuilding of Kerala due to the disaster of 2018. This program is also not only with the support of the individuals of the society, but these programs are being undertaken with the help of local bodies. Local bodies participating in the rebuild program of Kerala or in the program of Navakerala Karma Paddhati. It is a contribution of local government contribution, local body, people participation, etc. are the features involved in the disaster management of Kerala model of economic development. And in the Navakerala Karma Paddhati, you know that 4 missions we have. 4 important innovative missions we have introduced in the Navakerala Karma Paddhati. And all these are to touch the grassroots level of population, the most downtrodden class of persons, to give facilities, uplift the weaker section of the population, affected person, especially in the grassroots level. This Karma Paddhati has been created for the faster rehabilitation of the Kerala economy due to this disaster. Then, that 4 innovative missions included in the Karma Paddhati, you may know that one is what is called Haritha Keralam project. Haritha Keralam project. And the second one is Life Mission. What is Life Mission? Life Mission, Livelihood Inclusion and Financial Empowerment Mission. Livelihood, Inclusion and Financial Empowerment Mission, Life Mission, second constituent of the Karma Paddhati. The third one is Ardram Mission. Ardram Mission. And fourth one, Podu Vidyabhyasa Samrakshana Yojana. These are all the components. These are all the components for the Navakeralam Paddhati, which is supposed to be a model of disaster management, and so also it is a speciality with regard to the Kerala economy. All these are for the well-being of the lower, weaker section, most grassroots level of population, and the complete responsibility is not to the state government alone, but we find that the participatory role of the general public, wholehearted support of the general public with their cooperation, the local bodies. Local bodies are involved, and the local bodies will undertake these Karma Paddhatis originated in the Navakerala, a rehabilitation program of Kerala model of economic development. And it is also aiming at what? It is also aiming at a sustainable development with the people participation. We want a sustainable development, environmentally sustainable program we have formulated with this Navakeralam Karma Paddhati. For example, in the case of education, high quality school level education. Not only the war, these flood devastated economies to reconstruct, there should also be an improvement in quality with respect to education, health, and all these things are taken into consideration. Along with that, all these things we have to take into consideration. We find quality education, high quality school education included for a sustainable development of the Kerala economy in the Karma Paddhati. Similarly, we find people-friendly health facilities. That means there also we have the provisions in the health facility provided for the sake of the people, their participation and their health problems they can discuss with these health authorities. Their involvement is also taken into recognition. Health, people-friendly health facilities are to be provided in the health area, similar to what? Similar to the education, school education, quality education in the school level. We also find on the health level, that is people-friendly health facilities are to be provided. Nature-friendly, a third thing is that a nature-friendly agriculture, a nature-friendly agrarian development also is the objective of the Nava Keralam Karma Paddhati. Then also we waste management for that purpose, sustainable development purposes, waste management, clear environment, providing clean water facilities, especially drinking water facilities to the general public, then providing secure livelihood to the mass, targeting the lower weaker section of the population. All are the most important features with regard to the newly constituted Karma Paddhati for the rebuilding of the flood devastated economy. Kerala economy is having such a speciality with regard to the disaster management, which may not be sometimes a feature in other states. In other states, sometimes the government may be providing many provisions. That provisions need not be supported by the general public. Their cooperation, their contribution may not be supporting to government programs. Such a model we have adopted for the development of the Kerala economy. Another characteristic feature of Kerala economic model. So with respect to the Kerala economic model, we have taken this disaster management with a speciality.